This is a story from centuries ago, when roads were unpaved and journeys lasted for months. A young man named Zaman lived in a small village. Zaman was hardworking, but his circumstances were very difficult. He carried the responsibility of an elderly mother and a young sister on his shoulders. He often thought that he wished he could find a way to end his poverty. Finally, he gathered the courage and decided to travel to a foreign land. His mother said goodbye with tears in her eyes and tied 2 pieces of bread in an old bundle and said, "Son, wherever you go, never let go of honesty." Zaman began his journey. As he kept walking, many days passed. His shoes wore out and blisters formed on his feet. One evening, as the sun was setting and silence had spread all around, Zaman reached the edge of a dense forest. There he saw, under an old banyan tree, a saint with a radiant face sitting. In front of him, a small lamp was lit, and its light made the entire place feel calm. Zaman went closer, greeted him, and sat there. The dervish looked at him with kindness and asked, "O traveler, where do you intend to go on this distant path?" Zaman told his entire story and said, "Babaji, I have set out in search of fortune. Give me such advice that my journey does not go to waste." The dervish smiled and said, "Son, there are 2 kinds of wealth in this world. One is the kind that is in your pocket, and the other is the kind that lives in your chest in the form of wisdom and advice. I can tell you 3 things that will change your life, but I have one condition." Zaman asked with restlessness, "What condition, Babaji?" The dervish said, "In return for 1 piece of advice, I will take a portion of your earnings, or you will have to serve me for 3 days." Zaman had nothing to give, so he chose the path of service. For 3 days, he gathered wood for the dervish, brought water from the spring, and took care of him. When the 3 days were complete, the dervish called him near. The dervish looked seriously into Zaman's eyes and said, "Always remember my first advice. Whenever in life you see a path that is shorter, but there is danger or doubt there, always choose the longer path, because safety lies in it." Zaman felt a little surprised after hearing this. He thought, "This is a simple thing. I worked 3 days for this." But he said nothing and quietly lowered his head. Now his curiosity had increased about what the next 2 pieces of advice would be. Zaman was still sitting there when suddenly he heard the sound of horses approaching from a distance, as if a caravan was coming quickly in this direction. Would Zaman be able to act on this advice? Zaman had listened to the first advice, but his heart was still restless. He wanted something that could make him rich immediately. The dervish sensed his silence and smiled and said, "Son, for the second advice, you will have to serve me for 3 more days." Zaman worked hard for another 3 days. He brought herbs for the dervish from distant mountains and gathered soft grass for his pillow. After 3 days, the dervish made him sit near and gave the second advice. Never chase something that has nothing to do with you, and never risk your life out of useless curiosity. If something is hidden from your sight, do not try to uncover it. Zaman kept this in mind, although he still had the question in his mind how these things would lead him to his destination. After 3 more days of service, when it was time for Zaman to leave, the dervish gave him the last and most valuable advice. "Son, never make a decision in a state of anger. When intense anger comes, pause for a while before taking action and swallow your anger, because actions taken in anger become lifelong regret." The dervish gave Zaman a piece of dry bread and said, "Eat this bread when you reach the doorstep of your home." Zaman took the bread with gratitude, kissed the dervish's hands, and set off toward his destination. Zaman was now heading toward a big city. On the way, he met a caravan of travelers. The leader of the caravan said, "Young man, if you take the short path over this mountain, you will reach the city in 2 days. But if you take the smooth and longer road, it will take you 6 days." Zaman immediately remembered the dervish's first advice. Always choose the longer path where there is safety. The people of the caravan began to laugh at Zaman. "You are foolish. You will waste your time." All of them took the short path, but Zaman chose the long and tiring road alone. After 4 days, when Zaman reached the place where the short and long paths met again, the sight made his soul tremble. Bandits had looted and killed the entire caravan, and destruction was spread everywhere. Tears filled Zaman's eyes. He bowed there and thanked the dervish, whose one piece of advice had saved his life. Continuing his journey, Zaman reached a settlement where the people were very strange. There he found shelter in a grand mansion, but the owner of that mansion would go into a room at night, and strange sounds would come from there. Zaman felt the urge to look through the window to see what was happening. But Zaman had reached the window when suddenly he remembered the dervish's second advice. Would he be able to control his curiosity? What was the secret of that mansion? And where would that piece of dry bread lead him?
Zaman was standing outside the mysterious room of that grand mansion from where frightening and strange sounds were coming. The man inside him urged him to take just one look inside. But as soon as he touched the window panel, he remembered the dervish's words. "What is hidden from your sight, do not try to uncover it." Zaman immediately pulled his hand back and moved away and went to his room and slept. The next morning, when he was about to leave, the owner of the mansion, who was an old and imposing man, came to him. He looked into Zaman's eyes and asked, "Young man, did you hear any sound last night?" Zaman answered truthfully, "Yes, I did." The owner asked, "Then why did you not try to see?" Zaman replied, "My teacher advised me not to show curiosity in matters that do not concern me." Hearing this, the old man smiled and his eyes became moist. He said, "This one piece of advice saved your life. I am the chief of this city, but because of a curse, my son suffers from a condition that frightens people. Whoever tries to look into that room is killed by my guards, because I cannot tolerate the humiliation of my son. Until today, no one could control this curiosity except you." The chief was pleased with Zaman's wisdom and gave him a bag full of gold coins as provisions and sent him off with respect. Zaman had now become wealthy, but he still did not return home. He decided to work more so he could provide a prosperous life for his mother and sister. He went to a distant city and worked there for many years in trade and labor. During this time, he earned a great amount of wealth. 20 years passed. Zaman had now become a middle-aged man, but the memory of his home still stirred pain in his heart. At last, he gathered all his wealth and began his journey back to his village. After many months of travel, on a dark night, Zaman reached his village. His heart was beating fast. He quietly went near the wall of his old house and looked into the courtyard. The sight shook him to the core. He saw his wife, who had grown old, waiting for him, sitting in the courtyard, and with her sat a young man whose head rested in her lap, and she was gently running her hand through his hair. Fire ran through Zaman's body. He thought, "I spent 20 years working tirelessly for them, and this is what I find?" In anger and wounded pride, he drew his sword from its sheath and decided to go inside and end both of them. Zaman's sword was already out, and he was moving toward the door with a deadly intention. Would he remember the third advice? Who was that young man? And what role would that piece of dry bread given by the dervish play now?
Zaman's hand was tightly gripping the sword handle, and his eyes were filled with rage. As he stepped toward the threshold of the room, suddenly the calm and powerful voice of the dervish echoed in his ears. "Son, never make a decision in anger. Pause for a while before acting." Zaman stopped right there. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and tried to control himself. He thought, if this is true, it will remain true tomorrow. But if I spill blood in haste today, then this stain will never be erased. He put the sword back into its sheath and silently sat under a tree outside the house, waiting for morning. Morning came. Zaman gathered courage and knocked on the door. His wife opened it. After 20 years of separation, both of them had grown old. She recognized her husband and began to cry uncontrollably. Zaman pointed toward the young man who had now woken up and asked, "Who is he?" Tears of joy shone in his wife's eyes. She said, "My dear husband, this is your son. When you left, I was pregnant. After you left, he was born. I raised him with your memory, and today he has grown into a young man who looks just like you." The ground slipped from under Zaman's feet. He trembled and embraced his son and cried deeply. He looked toward the sky and thanked God, because if he had acted in anger that night, he would have killed his own child with his own hands. While everyone sat together talking, Zaman remembered the dry bread given by the dervish. He took it out from his bundle and said, "Let us all eat this bread today for blessing, which was given to me by a man of God." As soon as Zaman broke that dry bread in the middle, shiny diamonds and jewels started falling out one by one. Zaman and his family were shocked. Inside the bread, there was also a small piece of paper on which it was written, "O traveler, this is the reward for your 9 days of selfless service." Remember, advice is more valuable than diamonds because diamonds can buy the world, but advice saves life. Zaman was now not only rich, but also had the wealth of wisdom he gained through hardship and patience. He spent the rest of his life peacefully with his family and always taught others to choose the safe path instead of shortcuts. Avoid useless curiosity, and controlling anger is true bravery. Friends, this story teaches us that elders' advice and patience can take a person out of danger and lead to success. Friends, for more moral stories, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so every new video reaches you first. Tell in comments how you liked the video. See you in next video. Thank you.